Um, have you ever had a cherished childhood memory just completely upended decades later by a single offhand comment?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, just a casual remark at a family gathering that instantly rewrites your own personal history.
And it leaves you questioning literally everything you thought you knew about your past? Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are immersing ourselves in this raw, personal, and wildly entertaining audio recording from a woman named Tina May.
It really is incredible audio.
It is. She's sharing a highly specific story from her childhood out in California. And our mission today is to sort of sift through this narrative. It's a story that centers around a lost pet, a historically segregated neighborhood, and a profound cultural collision, really.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And ultimately, I think listening to this tape serves as undeniable proof that, well, 70s humor hits very differently today.
It really does, because the tape operates as this multi-layered time capsule.
Yeah.
We are not just hearing a funny family anecdote here. We're getting a microscopic view of American social dynamics during this huge transitional era. I mean, the recording gives you a firsthand look at the unspoken rules of a neighborhood, the bizarre mechanics of community integration, and really the psychological weight of secrets that families can carry for half a century.
Okay, let's unpack this by setting the scene based on how Tina actually describes her early life.
Right?
So the year is 1963, which is when our storyteller was born. She grows up in a California city during the 60s and early 70s. And in the recording, she characterizes her neighborhood as being defined by this unspoken segregation.
Mm-hmm.
It was widely considered the black part of town, and historically speaking, it was a pretty severely economically disadvantaged area.
Yeah, a poor neighborhood.
But listening to the tape, there's this fascinating detail. As a kid, Tina had absolutely no idea her family was poor.
Which is amazing.
Right. Her mother worked with this relentless dedication to make their home feel perfect. I mean, Tina actually mentions on the recording that she grew up assuming her family were the brains of the area.
Just because of how beautifully her mother curated their living space.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is the sheer psychological labor required by that parent to construct such an effective protective bubble.
Yeah, intense.
Tina's mother was essentially single-handedly shielding her daughter from the harsh socioeconomic realities and the systemic redlining of their entire environment. She manufactured this space of absolute dignity and pride within a broader context of structural disadvantage.
Hmm.
This was a neighborhood where people lived largely because institutional forces had pushed them there. But, you cannot maintain a static environment forever. And the audio reveals how that neighborhood dynamic receives a rather abrupt jolt.
A huge jolt.
Mm.
So the recording details how Tina's family lived on a corner lot, and the house right next door had just been sitting empty.
Right.
Then, one day, a new family moves in. According to Tina, it is the first Caucasian family that has ever lived in, or frankly even been seen in, their immediate neighborhood.
Yeah, a totally unprecedented event for that block.
Right. It consists of a husband, a wife, and their two kids, a boy and a girl.
Mhm.
And the crucial detail from the tape is that they are not from California.
Yep.
They are from the Deep South, specifically Kentucky.
Right.
And they arrive with incredibly strong Southern accents. So Tina points out the obvious tension here.
Yeah.
I mean, in the late 1960s, a white family from the rural South moving into a segregated, lower-income black community in California, that sounds like an absolute powder keg.
Oh, completely. You can just imagine the collective apprehension of the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
The residents are likely watching this corner house, calculating the potential for conflict. But the tape reveals that the tension diffuses through a shared socioeconomic reality.
Mm-hmm.
Tina describes the new arrivals as just regular folks who were completely broke, which is precisely the pragmatic reason they moved into that specific neighborhood to begin with.
They were in the same boat.
Exactly. They shared the exact same financial struggles as everyone else on the block. Furthermore, Tina really emphasizes that this family did not project any racial hierarchy. They operated purely as neighbors.
Yeah. It is a striking example of how economic solidarity can occasionally override deeply entrenched cultural and racial divides and establish a functional, albeit unexpected, community baseline.
And that baseline of neighborly tolerance sets up the central narrative of the tape perfectly. So the story jumps forward a bit to when Tina is in the 3rd grade.
So she's about 7 or 8 years old.
Right, 7 or 8. She mentions in the recording that she was a massive fan of Bugs Bunny.
Naturally.
Yeah. And around springtime, presumably in Easter, her teacher brings a live rabbit into the classroom.
A little white rabbit with a pink nose.
Exactly. Now, the audio notes that Tina's family practiced a religion that did not celebrate holidays, and that included Easter.
Right.
So while the rest of the class is participating in all these festive, holiday-themed activities with the rabbit, Tina is structurally excluded, which is tough. If you consider the isolating nature of that experience for a child of a minority faith,
Mm-hmm.
it's significant. You're placed in a holding pattern within the classroom while the dominant culture's traditions are just celebrated all around you.
Yeah, sitting on the sidelines.
It highlights the quiet alienation that often accompanies institutionalized holiday practices in public schools. However, the teacher's intervention in this specific narrative alters that dynamic completely.
It really does. Listening to the tape, the teacher's empathy really shines through. She notices Tina spending all of her recess time indoors, just sitting in the classroom petting and feeding this little white rabbit.
Because she loves it.
Right. And once the holiday passes, the teacher needs to find a permanent home for the animal.
Right, the classroom pet needs a real home.
Exactly. But rather than doing a standard Easter raffle, which Tina would be completely prohibited from entering because of her religion, the teacher pivots.
It's so clever.
It really is. She organizes an academic challenge instead.
Yeah.
She holds a spelling bee for the rabbit.
Yeah.
And Tina happens to be an exceptional speller. So she wins the rabbit completely fair and square.
That is a remarkable piece of pedagogical ingenuity. The teacher recognized a systemic barrier preventing a student from participating and engineered a merit-based loophole.
A loophole, exactly.
She tailored the opportunity to Tina's academic strengths, allowing her to experience the triumph of burning this pet without compromising her family's strict religious boundaries. It transforms a moment of potential marginalization into a core memory of achievement.
And you can hear the lingering joy in Tina's voice on the tape when she talks about bringing that rabbit home in its little cage.
Oh, she was thrilled.
So thrilled. But this is where the specific architecture of her 1970s California neighborhood comes into play. Tina describes her front yard as being highly graded, so it's elevated from the street level, but it's completely unfenced,
Unfenced.
totally open. One afternoon, she takes the cage out onto the front lawn to let the rabbit enjoy the fresh air. Suddenly, someone calls for her from inside the house. She runs inside to see what's going on, and typical of an 8-year-old, she gets entirely sidetracked by something else.
Which happens. But the physical environment here is critical to understand. An unfenced, graded lawn, acting almost as an open stage, speaks volumes about the cultural mindset of the era.
Yeah, different times.
Very different. This was a period characterized by a distinct lack of spatial boundaries and a broader community trust. The 1970s free-range childhood allowed kids and their pets to inhabit outdoor spaces with a level of autonomy that seems totally foreign today.
Oh, absolutely.
But that environment also facilitated a certain kind of vulnerability.
It did. So hours pass by. Eventually, her older brother, Terry, walks into the house carrying the rabbit cage.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
The door is open and the cage is empty.
Oof.
Tina realizes she left the rabbit outside on that unfenced lawn. She searches everywhere, but the little white rabbit with the pink nose has completely vanished.
The profound guilt associated with that specific kind of loss is staggering for a child.
Heartbreaking.
It's not just the grief of a pet disappearing. It is the crushing realization of personal culpability. That open yard transformed from a play space into the site of a severe childhood tragedy. It's a harsh induction into the permanence of mistakes.
It really is. In the audio, Tina then shifts the narrative forward by a couple of months. She has been quietly mourning the rabbit, but life continues.
As it does.
She mentions striking up a friendship with the 2 kids from the new Kentucky family next door. They began walking to school together.
Right.
One afternoon, they were playing outside, and the neighbor's mother comes out to offer them drinks. When the kids go to return the empty cups, the mother tells them to just step on inside the house.
Wow.
And I was really struck by this detail in the recording. How significant was crossing that physical threshold in a historically segregated neighborhood during that era?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, crossing that threshold is a monumental shift in the social fabric of that block. Absolutely. In that era, the boundary between public interaction and private space was heavily guarded. You did not casually enter someone else's home without explicit, formal permission, particularly across racial lines in a neighborhood defined by unspoken segregation.
Right.
For a white mother from the Deep South to casually invite a black child from California into her home for a glass of water represents a quiet yet radical dismantling of those inherited boundaries. It signals a transition from mere proximity to actual trust.
That trust clearly deepens. because a few days later, the neighbor and her daughter actually walk over to Tina's house.
Mm-hmm.
They formally ask Tina's mother for permission to have Tina over for dinner, and the mother agrees.
That's wonderful.
Tina vividly recalls the menu on the tape. The neighbor was an incredible cook, and they served mashed potatoes, gravy, a fresh salad, a homemade cake, and fried chicken.
A classic feast.
And Tina notes that she sat there enjoying this incredible meal, making a very specific point to behave exactly as her parents would expect, ensuring she didn't embarrass her family.
That hyper-awareness of behavior is a heavy burden for an 8-year-old.
Oh, definitely.
She's essentially acting as a miniature diplomat. She understands, even on a subconscious level, the weight of representation she carries sitting at that table.
Right.
Yet, the dinner itself stands as a quiet triumph of integration. You have a California-born child and a family from rural Kentucky sharing a table, communicating through the universal language of a home-cooked meal. It represents the absolute best-case scenario for cultural assimilation within that community.
It paints this beautifully optimistic picture of neighborhood bonding.
And-
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, boy.
The recording suddenly jumps 50 years into the future. It is now the year 2022.
50 years later.
Tina is 59 years old, and the context of this reunion is incredibly heavy. She is providing 24-hour nursing care for her mother, who is in the final grueling months of a battle with cancer.
That is so tough.
Her older brother, Terry, who is her only surviving sibling at this point, comes over with his wife to provide respite care, just to give Tina a brief moment to breathe.
The atmospheric pressure of a hospice environment cannot be overstated.
No.
The sheer exhaustion of end-of-life care strips away normal social filters. The siblings are trapped in this high-stress crucible, likely recounting the past as a psychological escape from the grim reality of the present.
Exactly.
They are digging through shared history for comfort, which often unearths things that were meant to stay buried.
Buried deep. So they're sitting there reminiscing, and out of nowhere, Terry just starts laughing.
Just out of the blue.
Out of the blue.
Yeah.
He looks across the room at Tina and says, "Remember that time you went to the neighbor's house and you had dinner with them when you were an 8-year-old?
Oh, no.
Tina is baffled and asks what he means. Then Terry drops a bomb that shatters 50 years of history.
Yet it comes.
He says, "You remember your rabbit that you lost? Well, those folks next door, they came from Kentucky. They saw a rabbit wandering around. They thought it was lost. They cooked it. That wasn't fried chicken you guys had. They fried your rabbit."
It is an absolute paradigm shift.
Cool.
Analyzing Terry's role here reveals a fascinating psychological dynamic. Remember, he was the older brother who originally found the empty cage on the lawn.
Right. He was the one who found it.
He casually mentions to Tina that he discovered the truth about the neighbors the very next day.
The next day.
He knew exactly what had happened to the rabbit, but he calculated the emotional devastation it would cause his sister and chose to absorb that burden himself. He compartmentalized a profoundly dark, borderline macabre secret for half a century.
50 years.
The fact that the dam finally broke during the intense, sleep-deprived pressure of their mother's hospice care makes total psychological sense. The timing is absurd, but humanly predictable.
It is. The reaction captured on the tape is pure chaos. Tina is sitting there at 59 years old, the horror of the realization washing over her.
I can only imagine.
Her immediate response is just repeating, "I ate my rabbit, they cooked my rabbit."
Oh, my goodness.
Even Terry's wife, Tina's sister-in-law, is absolutely appalled. She looks at Terry in disbelief, demanding to know why he would unleash this deeply traumatizing information right in the middle of a deathbed vigil.
It's a fair question.
It is. And Terry's only defense is a bewildered, "Well, I thought she knew."
That assumption speaks to the bizarre communication gaps within families. You assume a secret that monumental eventually leaked out, but it never did.
Never did.
Furthermore, Terry's explanation of the neighbor's actions sharply illuminates the cultural collision we discussed earlier. It is a stark collision of environments.
How so?
Well, to a California kid, a white rabbit with a pink nose is a pampered pet named after a cartoon character. To a struggling family from rural Kentucky, a stray rabbit is an opportunistic protein source.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
In their specific cultural context, an animal wandering freely outside is literally a meal running across the lawn. There was no malice involved. They simply processed the environment through a completely different socioeconomic lens.
They genuinely just saw dinner. And this revelation leads us to the core focus of today's deep dive, how 70s humor hits different today.
It really does.
Because at the time of recording this audio, Tina is 62 years old. After the initial shock wore off, her perspective shifted completely. The twist is that she now finds the entire sequence of events absolutely hilarious.
That is amazing.
She notes on the tape how horrific it was to process initially, but today she cannot stop laughing about the absurdity of it. She even drops this incredibly pragmatic line at the very end of the recording, admitting it was delicious, though. Great meal. She was a wonderful cook.
This raises an important question regarding the alchemy of time. How does the passage of decades synthesize genuine trauma into high comedy?
That's the question.
When you are an 8-year-old child, the loss of a pet is a cataclysmic event. Discovering that you unknowingly consume that pet is the premise of a psychological horror film.
Literally.
However, when you are 62 years old, having navigated the profound grief of losing parents and the general attrition of life, your lens widens. The sheer, unfathomable absurdity of the situation begins to override the horror. You develop an appreciation for the bizarre, indifferent mechanics of the universe.
Tina sums it up perfectly on the tape when she says, life growing up in the 70s and 60s. It was crazy.
It was.
When you juxtapose her story against modern sensibilities, the contrast is jarring. Today's environment involves microchipped pets, hypervigilant surveillance, and rigidly structured playdates.
Very structured.
The notion of an unfenced yard leading to a lost rabbit, which then becomes a secret kept for 50 years, culminating in a neighborhood barbecue where a child accidentally eats her own pet, it reads like dark fiction to a modern audience.
It absolutely reads like fiction, yet it underscores the specific resilience cultivated by that generation. They navigated highly unstructured, occasionally traumatic childhood landscapes and managed to process those experiences into enduring family legends. The brilliance of this story lies in the cascading good intentions that paved the way to disaster. The teacher was attempting to be inclusive.
Right.
The neighbors were attempting to be hospitable by sharing a lucky catch. The older brother was attempting to be protective by swallowing a devastating truth. A series of entirely well-meaning decisions culminated in the most macabre, accidental dinner party ever hosted in 1970s California.
It is a wonderfully complex narrative.
Yeah.
We began with a teacher spelling bee and an empty cage on a graded lawn, and we ended with a 50-year-old punchline delivered amidst the heavy machinery of a hospice living room.
What a journey.
The tape takes us through the unspoken racial segregation of the era, the quiet diplomacy of a shared meal, the stark differences in cultural survival instincts, and the hilarious protective silence of an older sibling. It ultimately proves just how beautifully messy, entirely unpredictable, and fundamentally human our shared histories really are.
And as we conclude our analysis of Tina's recording, I want to leave you with a final thought. You have just listened to how a woman's reality was completely dismantled by her brother's casual revelation half a century later. Now turn that lens inward. Examine the lore of your own family. What cherished, completely innocent memory from your own childhood might actually be hiding a wildly absurd, completely different reality that your siblings or parents are simply waiting a few more decades to finally tell you about.